I'm Bill Lutz, and I'm powered by science. When I first bought the car, it had a 540 GM crate motor in it with like 500 horsepower worth of nitrous on it. I've owned the car now 33, 34 years. It's literally went through every combo you can pretty much come up with. I mean, I had a stock crate motor in it, then it went to a Gene Fulton 615, then we went turbos, then we went to a 822-inch motor. But in between there, we went pro mod racing for 4 years. And then when we came back this time, we came back with a Brad Anderson Hemi with a PSI screw blower in it. It's basically because, in my opinion, it's the ultimate power adder. It's when you hit the throttle, it's got 45 pounds of boost on the tranny brake. As soon as you let go of the brake, it's got 60 pounds of boost, and it's just hang on, you know, kicks you dead in the ass, and away you go. There's really nothing more violent than a screw blower. We're going to make another change if my new blower gets here tomorrow or Saturday or whenever. We're actually going to put a big roots blower on it. Larry Morgan just made me a new one especially for me in this car. I'm just waiting on it to get finalized, and then I'm having a guy drive it straight to the track course, and we're putting it right on the car.
What kind of power does this thing make it? 60 pounds?
When we put it on chassis dyno, it made 3860s where we stopped at on the hub dyno. I believe probably 4,000, 4,100 if we're really pushing it. It's got a 5-speed Liberty in it. This weekend we're only shifting at 3 gears, not 5. Did not take a 50-pound penalty. They hit us with a penalty here. So we shifted 1, 3, 5 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But that's the beauty of a Liberty. We can shift it 1, 4, 5, 1, 2, 5. Anyway, you can shift them any way you want.
Right.
I can take off in 5th gear. I mean, we can do anything we want with a Liberty, and that's why I love them, because they're so versatile. Like when we race on the street, I only leave in 5th gear. We don't even shift the car.
Yeah.
When we leave on this tire, we leave on a, in low gear. On a 28 slick, we'll leave in either 2nd or 3rd.
Okay.
So, it's just, that's what makes the car so versatile, is that no matter what tire we have it on, we have a combination for that tire.
And a gear ratio.
And a gear ratio and everything. We never change the gear ratio. It always stays the same. We just leave in a different gear.
Right. Starting line ratio.
Yeah, starting line ratio is everything.
In a world where, I mean, cars come left and right, new cars, everybody, what has kept you in this car specifically for so long?
One, it's family. I mean, bottom line, I've got it in my will to where the car can never be sold unless there's dire straits, and then, then you have to accept it. But the car will never be sold, though. It'll go to Kenny, it'll go to my grandson, my granddaughter, whoever.
Right.
Somebody in my family will drive this car throughout eternity. It's been redone multiple times. Jeff Miller and the Bumblebee crew, which is parked right here with us, they front half the car. Marty Merlette back half the car.
Yeah.
Literally the only thing that's left on the car from the original car that I bought in the 90s or whenever I bought it, or 2000s, whatever, is the main hoop bar. That's the only bar in the car that's still the same in the car from the day that I bought it.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing, because like so many people will just, I'll just sell this and then go buy one or something. Like, it's cool to see you stay with the same car.
It is, and like I said, it's I mean, to me, the car's family. I mean, it's like having a son, a daughter. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, it means that much to me that I'm willing to say the car can be sold in my will.
Right.
So. Well, Kenny and the guys showed up on Monday, got everything set up. I flew in on Tuesday for testing. Testing went decent, nothing stellar, but you know, we just had this car down to a complete bare frame basically 60 days ago, and totally rebuilt it, made it extremely lightweight compared to what it was. So, you know, we just started from scratch again, basically. So we unloaded, made a couple little test hits to get some data, and then Q1 came around. We went 384 to 196 on Q1. Q2, the car was on a little better run, but it was carrying the wheels, and it was going a little bit right towards the wall, and you know, we get so many qualifiers here at this race. There's not really a reason to try and be a hero on Q2.
Yeah.
So we just went and we got everything to where we went up for Q3. We tried to swing a little bit at it.
You know what they say? Ain't nothing big. He can walk around with a pigeon at a cosplay.
And it just knocked the tire off. So we still have Q4 today, then eliminations on Sunday. So we expected to come here and run somewhere between 375 and 372 is what we want to run. Number one qualifier is a 64. We just need more runs for that. You know, we need more data. We haven't ran on the radios very much at all. But you know, our car is very versatile. I mean, we leave here, we're on a radio today. We leave here, we go to Bradenton next week for World Series of Pro Mod, and we're on a 3310.5W. Then we're going to go to Shadyside, South Carolina. We're on a 28 Slick. And then we come back and we're back on a 275. So we run our car on every single tire you can imagine, basically. You know, and we normally do well with it, but I would say that this weekend's not been a struggle. We definitely haven't performed the way we want yet, but we will. Yeah, we should get one more qualifier tonight, which would be Q4. We didn't get bumped back any farther in the orders. We hung tight there at 13th. Our goal is to be top 8 or top 5 even. That's where we want to be by the end of the weekend. You know, we do this all on a crew that is my son, a couple other guys, Patrick Miller, Jeb Miller, and all the guys, Cheyenne. Just some normal people that all get together and love racing. We got the Bumblebee car over here and got my car here. We put everything we have into it. Most people look and say, oh, you know, you're rich. Bullshit. I spend everything I make, I promise you. And all of a sudden, here, there, everywhere to make this happen. Everybody spends the exact same thing to go racing, whether it's a 13-second car or whether it's a 5-second quarter mile like mine. And it's every penny you make. And I mean, and the only difference is the amount of money that we make that we're willing to spend. And that's all it boils down to.
It's a very good analogy.
It is. I mean, you know, I've always used that because when I used to go 9 seconds, I was broke then too.
Right.
I go 5 seconds now. I'm still broke, so nothing changed. I do it for the love, and I'll tell you, if we didn't do it with our family and friends that we do it with, I would quit tomorrow in a heartbeat. If I can't race with Kitty, my wife, my sister-in-law, and everybody, I would quit racing tomorrow in a heartbeat. It's a family sport for us. I believe if you get your kids into this sport, you know, they won't be out doing drugs. They won't be out getting into mayhem and all this because, again, they're going to be broke. They can't afford none of that shit. They're going to be here at the track working. They were here at 3 a.m. in the morning, not working on our car, working on a competitor's car, helping a competitor get a rear gear put together. We had parts in there. Some other guys had some parts. Kenny and Patrick's in my trailer at 3 a.m. in the morning, getting parts together for another team that we have to compete against. But to me, that's what racing is. If you're not willing to help the guy that's going to line up beside you round one, you got problems because, I mean, I'll give you anything in my trailer. I mean, I don't care what it is. If I got it and you can use it and I don't need it, it's yours. And, you know, just bring it back at the next race, replace it, whatever. I don't care. You know, and that's the camaraderie that you have in drag racing that a lot of other sports don't have. And there's racers here today that, you know, they will have a part that somebody will need and they will not give it to them. I'm not that guy. You know, we got a spare motor in there. If this car parked right here needs a spare motor, my spare motor goes right in that car. If the guy down there needs a spare motor and I don't think I'm going to need it, he can come and get my spare motor and put it in his car. I have no issue. There's a written rule. You break it, you fix it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't bring it back to me in multiple pieces, but there's very few people on earth harder on shit than we are. We knock the blower off this thing at least 3 times a weekend. Now this weekend, it's the blower bolts are the original bolts that we showed up here with. I'm super proud of that. We have, I think, 26 sets of blower bolts in there, you know, just because, you know, but some weekends it just sucks, man. I mean, like, we went to Yellow Bullet Nationals last year in Maryland, and probably the most expensive weekend in my life. Like I said, we carry a lot of parts with us for this car. When we left Yellow Bullet after 5 days, there was not a spare part in the trailer that was worth a shit. That hits the American Express card very hard.
Yeah.
When you have to replace all that on Monday morning for the next race.
Yeah.
But again, I wouldn't do it any other way. I mean, yes, it's expensive, but it's what we love to do, so it's worth it to me. We're one of the few that will still run them quarter mile. We run them at World Cup in Maryland in November. Yeah. Usually awesome air and stuff. I've still never got our goal of what we want. We want to put it in the 560s on the 275. We'll get there. It just takes time, you know. When you're trying to do things that people haven't done, you're going in areas that's not charted, so you have to just work on it and continue to work on it.
You do a lot of different styles of racing. What is your favorite style? You know, is it the quarter mile stuff, going 200?
I'm a quarter mile person. I love quarter mile. I mean, most people say that, you know, quarter mile is way harder on parts. That's bullshit, because this car has the exact same wick of fuse for an 1/8 mile as we do a quarter mile. We just have to stretch it out a little longer. So, you know, if you know you're going quarter mile, you know, we run 2 overdrives in it to go quarter mile. So 1, 2, 3 is our normal shift pattern, and then 4, 5 goes to overdrives to get us out the last 660 feet of the quarter mile. Without that, obviously, it can't go there. You know, I mean, because we're already 10,000 at the 1/8 mile. You know, we figure out the ratios, everything we need, and it'll be 10,200, 10,400 right at the quarter mile stripe, like we planned it.
So this thing rotates at 10,000 RPM?
Yeah, we shift every year 10,000, and it'll go through anywhere between 10.2 and 10.6.
You just say that so nonchalantly, like, yeah, it's just 10,000 RPM.
Well, it's
a lot.
It's a Hemi. That's the first thing. You know, when you have good parts, you know, we run a Brad Anderson Hemi. They're tested to 11,400. So even at 10,200, 10,600, we're not really pushing it as hard as it could. Just your shelf life of parts go way down. We get 40 runs out of a set of rods currently. If we go to that 10,006, 10,008, comes down to 20 runs is all we get.
Okay.
You go 11,000, you get 6 runs out of a set of rods. So it's just a bad matter of attrition, you know. But its happy place is 10,000 RPMs. That's where it wants to run. They run super loose clearances in them. We run the 60 weight Hot Shot Secrets oil in it. 180 pounds of oil pressure could take up for all the clearance that it has in the motor. You know, because a Hemi rod and piston is super heavy, you have to have that extra buffer in there, and that's where the oil becomes so important, that the bearing never touches down on the crank never touches down on the block, and the pistons never touch on the cylinder walls. If you don't have the proper lubricity of the oil there to give it that cushion, it'll spin a main bearing, it'll spin a rod bearing, things like that. The cylinder walls will scuff really bad.
Right.
And we have zero issues with that, even running it at 10,400. It looks brand new after 40 passes. We just throw a new set of rods, new set of bearings in it, and away we go again.
So how did your relationship with Hot Shot start?
Well, I have a good friend that knows Kyle from Hot Shot Secrets. He introduced us, and we always had an issue burning push rods. Every race we had to carry at least 2 extra sets of push rods with us, because the oil would break down and it would burn the tips off of the push rods. One thing led to another, hooked up with Kyle. We've never burned a push rod, never heard a lifter, never heard anything since we've switched to the oil. We have people all the time come over and they'll be, hey, you do have this push rod, such and such length or whatever. And I'm like, let me do you one better. Let me give you 10 quarts of oil, and then you'll never have this issue again. People put a price on oil, but in reality, it's an insurance policy. I used to be an insurance agent. To me, oil no matter what it costs, it's an insurance policy for that motor. And if you can buy an insurance policy that guarantees you that you're not going to hurt a motor, based off of the oil losing its viscosity or its lubricity of it, because, you know, we run a ton of alcohol. This thing burns 8 to 9 gallons of alcohol on an 8-mile pass. The oil gets flooded with alcohol. So you have to be able to have an oil that will withstand that alcohol absorption and still give you the lubrication that you need, because alcohol is extremely dry.
Yeah.
If it touches a bearing, I promise you, it's spinning that bearing. If it gets on the cylinder walls, it's going to scuff the cylinder walls. You know, and if the push rods, you know, we run like 700 pounds on the seat and like 14 or 1500 on the valve open. So the amount of pressure on top of the push rod and the adjuster is just off the chart. And they're almost 1 inch lift in these things. So there's a lot going on in there, a lot of moving parts to where the oil is truly the one thing that only keeps it alive. If you run, you know, a oil that is not as good, I can assure you, you're going to have push rod issues. I mean, we've had them for years. And again, we've never had an issue since the day that we switched to this oil.
What are you doing?
Nitrogen valves. We just put a new head on it, 8 new pistons. Get it ready for the next round. Dropped an exhaust valve on the last run. I don't even know why it dropped an exhaust valve. I mean, they were new valves, but it did. So, put a new head on it, 8 new pistons. Kenny and the guys did. I'm the only person that goes through the valves though, so that's my job now. Pretty simple job on these type of things. They're made to work on. You know, typically if we just need to put a head and a piston in and we can do that in about 25 minutes. We got hours upon time between rounds, so there's no rush. We'll get ready to fire it up here and warm it up and make sure to go over everything one more time afterwards. Warm it up, we'll go back to report the head down and everything. So other than that, it's all good. Ready for round 2 now. Yeah, if I want to thank everybody that helps us, I mean, it's a pretty large group of people. First and foremost, obviously, Hot Shot Secrets. They're a great sponsor, and you know, we have Brad Anderson Engineering with the motor. It's got a PSI screw blower on it, bore out of Michigan. Liberty Gears, they supply us the transmissions in it. Cameron Store Converters. We run a Bruno drive unit in it, so it's a little separate from the transmission. It's got its own little deal there. We run that. Mark Williams rear ends, Mark Williams axles, RC Comp, Mark Mincer struts and shocks. We worked with Mark for many, many years. We run a Holly system on this car. That was new for us last year. Fell in love with it. Been absolutely flawless for us. I started a new company here about 8 months ago called Skinny Me America. It focuses on weight loss through medical shots. Been phenomenal, 8 months. As any new business, it's always a struggle, but it's been anything I could dream of and more. Brought that on my car, obviously. People can talk to me at the races about that. You know, it's just...
And it's done some for you personally, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm down 85 pounds myself. Between myself, my wife, my son, daughter-in-law, my daughter, and sister-in-law, we're down 645 pounds as a family. I mean, now you think about that, you just don't even think it's even possible. You know, Kenny, my son, he was over 300. I was 300 at one point. I floated like 218, 220. Kenny's down under, right at 200 even now. My wife's down 139 pounds. She's back to our day we got married weight. You know, it's just, it's cool to see this transform. I got a young kid I just took on. He's 606 pounds and he's only 24 years old. And his comment was to me, he goes, I'm a dead man sitting on this couch. And I'm like, you absolutely are. But I'm gonna work with him and I'm gonna get him down to, he's already down 70 pounds in 4.5 months. He had a lot to lose, but I wanna get him down under 500 so he can really get back out walking. You know, springtime's coming and I wanna see him get down into the low 3s, high 2s, where, you know, where his pictures were on the wall that I looked at. And, you know, when I was looking at his wall, you could see he gained 50, 75 pounds every single year. Every picture, you could just see it in his face. But, you know, this is changing people's lives. We're now doing franchises. We just signed our second franchise. Our first one was in Pocono, Pennsylvania. Our second one now is in Ocean City, Maryland. Our third one's going to be in Jacksonville, Florida. We have 4 going into Michigan. I have 1 going into Louisiana. I mean, so we're growing very rapidly. I love changing people's lives for the better. I went 016 red.
Okay.
Which, you know, it's right there. I mean, it's not like I guessed at the light or anything of that nature. But like I said, as a driver, you know, you got to be up on the wheels, belts tight, everything ready to go. You get yourself worked up because you're running the #1 qualifier. We were in the middle of the pack, so, you know, it's just a bad draw on our end, but it is what it is. I mean, you qualify shitty, you get a bad draw in the later rounds. You know, we need to be a top 5 car. That's all there is to it. And we'll test and burn it up and rebuild it, do whatever we have to do to basically, you know, to be a top 5 car. When we come to Alabama in 3 weeks, I'll promise anybody this is a top 5 car then.